Hi Megan, this is Carolee Case with CaroleeCasePhotography.com and the Chic Critique Forum, here for your first week's critique. Let's go ahead and get started with your first image. I think this image is absolutely adorable. I love the way that you've been able to position the baby inside the basket and make her still look very comfortable, calm, peaceful, and safe. I really love this chunky blanket too. It's so soft and adds a beautiful texture to the image. I also love that the baby's skin isn't touching anything hard or any part of the basket. Again, this helps us to feel safe when we are looking at the image of this sweet baby. There are just a few things that I would probably do if this were my image to get it ready to show the client. I do think that it's a tad bit cool, so I would do some slight warming. You could either use a warming action that you have or whatever your go-to method is for adding warmth into a cool photo. And then I would go ahead and add a little bit of curves here just to up the contrast and make the darks a tad bit darker. Let me pull it up here. There we go. And I would keep the light tones about the same. You can see here in the curve that I really didn't touch the mid-tones very much, only pulled down the darks a bit to increase the contrast. And then you mentioned in the description of the image that you thought maybe her skin was a bit too red. I do see some red tones in there as well, so you could go ahead and target that with a hue and saturation adjustment layer. I just went in here and sampled a color from her skin. You go to the drop-down box and then I selected cyans and then clicked on her cheek to sample the skin color and then made these adjustments. Plus 12 in the hue, plus 3 in the saturation, and minus 6 in the lightness. Then when I opened it up to see how it affected the image, it was a little strong for my liking, so I just adjusted the opacity down to 40%. Other than that, this image is absolutely beautiful. One other thing I wanted to mention, I noticed in your description of the image that your shutter speed was around 1/60. That is amazing that you have such a steady hand and can shoot at 1/60. I really find that my shutter needs to be around 1/160 or 1/200, especially for busy moving children. But I applaud you for being able to achieve such a crisp, clear image with that type of shutter speed. So great job, Megan. I did see in your description of your other images that you used higher shutter speeds, so I can tell that you are very familiar with your camera settings and the importance of an appropriate shutter speed. All right, image number 2. I love this image as well. Megan, you've really got it down for positioning newborns and making them look peaceful and happy. I love that we can see her fingers tucked up here under her cheek. These squishy little lips are just beautiful. I love that her feet are tucked up under her booty. And with your depth of field, that there's a little bit of blur back here. The image is a little bit far to the right. We are almost going to lose this little foot over here on the right hand side. So I would make a little bit of an adjustment. I would shrink the image slightly. Let me show you how I did this. There we go. Shrink the image slightly and pull it over here. You'd have to do some cloning on this side to fix it, but then she is more centered in the frame and I think it's a little bit more visually pleasing. Then I would probably add a little bit of a curves adjustment just to lighten and brighten the skin a bit. And then if you wanted this back side to have just a tad more light, because it's in a subtle shadow, you could dodge the area, selectively increase the midtones in a curves adjustment layer, or play with the levels. For this example, I just went ahead and made some changes to the levels. And then of course I masked it off so it only applied to this part of the image. I do really love this purple backdrop that you've used. Her skin tone looks just beautiful. She's not too red, she's not too orange. It's just lovely. I really enjoy this image. Other than those few changes, I think that this is spot on. Beautiful job, Megan. All right, here is image number 3. Now we have the straight off the camera picture here, and then your final edited image over here. Now, there are lots of things that I like about the straight off the camera image. First is that I can see lots of beautiful shadows here that add depth to the portrait and help keep her looking three-dimensional. Sometimes when we edit and start to get rid of shadows, it can start to make them look a little flat. So let me do just a quick edit on this photo so you can see how I would treat it if it were mine, and maybe there's something in here that you can apply to your editing method. First, the image does look underexposed, and since our goal as photographers is to get it right in the camera, I would first try and increase the exposure when shooting. I actually tend to overexpose ever so slightly to avoid grain in any underexposed areas, but since I'm working with the JPEG today, I'll show you what I would do. I would go ahead and increase the curves significantly. Here is the curves adjustment that I made. I pulled up everything really quite high. Next, I would add a little bit of skin smoothing, and I would selectively sharpen the eyes, nose, and lips. Next, I would probably target this pink area right here in her fingers where she was maybe starting to lose a little bit of circulation in her hand. I just added a hue and saturation adjustment layer and targeted the reds. You can see it right there. Of course, I masked it off so that the color adjustment didn't affect anything except for that little area of her hand. It's a subtle change, but now there is no way that that difference in coloring can become a distraction. You can also target red or purple limbs using the color balance or the selective color adjustment layer options as well. And then to make the final adjustments, I would go ahead and bump up the midtones even more with a curves adjustment layer so it's really nice and bright. And then I would tone down the oranges and yellows in her skin just because her skin was a little saturated. Again, there are lots of different methods for targeting and fixing skin tones, including selective color and the color balance. But in this one, I went ahead and targeted the yellow channel. So this is how I would edit the image if it were mine. Now let's jump over here to your final edit. I really love the softness of your image. It's very pretty, soft, airy, and I love the rosy, muted tones. I do feel like some of that softness is affecting some areas like the eyes, the eyebrows, and the nose. And I do really love to see contrast in shadows, like here around the cheek and in the lips and under the nose. It just makes the baby look more real and three-dimensional. So something to consider as you're working on your editing process and trying to find a style that is uniquely you. I look forward to seeing more of your beautiful work, Megan. I hope this has been helpful, and I'll chat with you next week. Thanks!